What if one of the smallest coins in your pocket could be hiding a story worth far more than its face value? Imagine finding an old British 2 pence coin dated 1971, 1988, 1993, or 2001 and realizing that the tiny piece of metal in your hand has survived decades of British history. These coins may look ordinary, but some examples can become much more interesting because of their condition, proof status, unusual varieties, or genuine minting errors. And before you rush to spend one, you need to know exactly what you are looking at. The 1971 2p takes us back to the dramatic birth of Britain's decimal currency. The 1988 and 1993 issues belong to different stages of Queen Elizabeth II's reign in changing coin production, and the 2001 coin represents the beginning of a new century while carrying traditional British symbolism. But here is the shocking truth. Not every old 2p is a million-dollar treasure. The real excitement is finding the exceptional coin hiding among millions of ordinary ones. A tiny difference in condition, production, or design could make collectors look twice. So before you throw that old 2p into a coin jar or spend it without thinking, stop, look closely, and discover the fascinating secrets these 4 British coins may be hiding. Your next discovery could be much more interesting than you ever expected. If you have an old, British 2 pence coin dated 1971 sitting somewhere in a drawer, an old collection, a box of coins, or even forgotten in a jar, you may want to look at it much more carefully before spending it. This tiny bronze coin is not just an ordinary piece of pocket change. It is connected to one of the biggest changes in British monetary history. But here is where the story gets really interesting. Not every 1971 2 pence coin is extremely valuable, and the internet is full of exaggerated claims suggesting that an ordinary example could be worth millions of dollars. The truth is much more fascinating. The 1971 2p was the very first British 2p coin introduced when the United Kingdom changed to decimal currency, making it a genuine piece of modern British history. If your coin has the date 1971, you are holding one of the earliest examples of this denomination. The real question is not simply, is this coin old? The real questions are, what condition is it in? Is it a normal circulation strike or a special proof or uncirculated example? Does it have an unusual minting error? Are the details sharp? And most importantly, does it have something that collectors actually want? So before you dismiss that old 1971 2p as worthless, stay with me because we are going to uncover its history, design, metal composition, rarity, condition factors, possible collector value, and the details that can make one example more interesting than another. The story of the 1971 2 pence coin begins with a massive transformation in the United Kingdom. Before decimalization, British money used the complicated pounds, shillings and pence system, where 1 pound was divided into 20 shillings and 1 shilling into 12 old pence. Britain was preparing to move to a completely different system in which 1 pound would be divided into 100 new pence. Decimal day arrived on 15 February 1971, and the new decimal coins entered everyday life. The 2p was one of the new denominations created for this system. The Royal Mint records the first issue of the 2p as 15 February 1971, making this date especially important for collectors interested in the beginnings of decimal British coinage. Royal Mint. The new coins initially carried the words new pence, helping people distinguish the new decimal money from the old, pre-decimal currency. That wording continued on the original 2p design for years before eventually disappearing from the coinage. Royal Mint. Imagine the confusion ordinary people experienced during that transition. Suddenly, familiar old money was being replaced, and brand new coins were appearing in shops, banks, and pockets. The 1971 2p therefore represents more than 2 pence. It represents the moment Britain entered a completely new monetary era. That historical connection is one of the strongest reasons collectors continue to find early decimal coins interesting. Now let us look closely at what makes the 1971 2p recognizable. The coin was made from bronze, with a composition of approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, and 0.5% tin. It weighs about 7.12 grams and has a diameter of approximately 25.9 millimeters with a plain edge. Royal Mint. On the front is the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created for the early decimal coinage by designer Arnold Machine. The portrait shows the young queen wearing a tiara, surrounded by lettering identifying her. On the reverse is one of the most recognizable designs in early British decimal coinage, the badge associated with the Prince of Wales, featuring 3 ostrich feathers and a coronet, with the words new, pence, the denomination 2, and the motto Ictian, meaning I serve, numista. This design was created by Christopher Ironside and became strongly associated with the early 2p denomination. When you hold one of these coins today, you are looking at a design created specifically for the beginning of Britain's decimal era. That makes the 1971 date especially significant because it marks the first year of the denomination rather than simply being another random year in a long series. Here is one of the most surprising facts about the 1971 2p. Despite being historically important, the ordinary circulation version is not automatically rare. A very large number were produced for the introduction of decimal currency. The recorded circulation mintage is approximately 1,454,856,000 coins, meaning more than 1 billion examples were struck. Coinsanduc.com. This is extremely important when judging value. A coin can be old, attractive, and historically interesting without being worth a fortune. Rarity is one of the biggest ingredients in collectible coin value, and a coin produced in enormous quantities normally needs something else, such as exceptional condition, a genuine error, a special finish, or strong collector demand to become significantly more valuable. So if you discover a worn 1971 2p in ordinary circulated condition, do not automatically believe someone telling you it is worth $1 million. That kind of claim needs extraordinary evidence. The exciting part is that collectors do not only search for low mintage dates, they also look for coins that survived in unusually beautiful condition. Proof examples: unusual varieties and authentic minting errors. That means your 1971 coin is worth examining carefully. But it also means we need to separate genuine collecting opportunities from sensational internet stories. Condition can completely change the conversation. Think about 2 identical 1971 2p coins that were made at the same time. One may have spent decades in pockets, cash registers, drawers, and bags, collecting scratches, dirt, dents, and surface wear. The other may have been placed away shortly after being produced and preserved with sharp details, clean surfaces, and attractive original appearance. To a casual observer, they may look almost identical, but to a serious collector, they can be very different coins. Look closely at the Queen's portrait. Are the facial details still sharp? Can you clearly see the hair and tiara? Check the lettering around the coin. Is it complete and well-defined? On the reverse, examine the feathers, coronet, and the Ictian motto. Are the raised details strong, or have they become flat from circulation? Also examine the fields, the open areas of the coin, for scratches, marks, stains, or heavy discoloration. A high-grade example can be far more desirable than a heavily worn example. But condition must be judged carefully. Cleaning can also hurt collector. Appeal because aggressive polishing may remove the original surface and leave unnatural scratches. So if you think you have a beautiful old 1971 2p, resist the temptation to polish it until it shines. Sometimes the original surface is much more valuable to a collector than a bright but damaged appearance. Another fascinating area is proof and specially preserved examples. A proof coin is not simply an ordinary coin that happened to remain shiny. Proof pieces are specially produced with a different preparation and striking process to create a higher quality presentation. The 1971 2p exists in proof form as well as normal circulation issues, and those examples can have a different place in the collector market. Coinsanduc.com. This is where the words rare and valuable need to be used carefully. A proof coin may be much more collectible than an ordinary circulated example, but that still does not mean every proof is worth thousands or millions. The exact value depends on authenticity, condition, certification, demand, and the actual market for that particular piece. Some early decimal coins were also preserved in official sets or special packaging, and surviving examples in excellent condition can attract collectors. If your 1971 2p has unusually sharp details and looks almost untouched, do not assume it is just a lucky circulation coin. It may deserve closer examination. The safest approach is to compare it with known examples. Inspect the surfaces under good lighting. Check its weight and diameter if necessary. And for a potentially valuable specimen, seek an opinion from a reputable coin professional, rather than relying on an online headline. Now comes the part that can make coin hunting genuinely exciting. Errors and unusual characteristics. During the manufacturing of coins, mistakes can occasionally happen. A coin may be struck incorrectly, have an unusual alignment, show a genuine doubled feature, have an abnormal plancher problem, or display another manufacturing anomaly. But this is also an area where collectors need to be extremely careful. A scratch caused by circulation is not automatically a mint error. A damaged letter is not automatically a rare variety. A strange-looking mark can simply be the result of decades of contact with other coins. Even discoloration can come from environmental exposure rather than the minting process. If you believe your 1971 2p has an unusual feature, photograph both sides clearly and examine the feature under magnification. Do not scrape, polish, bend, or alter the coin in an attempt to make the feature more obvious. A genuine mint error should be supported by evidence that the unusual characteristic was created during production rather than after the coin entered circulation. This distinction is incredibly important because a dramatic-looking damaged coin can sometimes be far less valuable than an ordinary-looking coin with a genuine, documented minting error. There is another major reason the 1971 2p deserves attention. Its metal changed later in the series. The original 2p coins were bronze, but from 1992, the standard composition changed to copper-plated steel, largely because of changing metal costs. The Royal Mint notes that 1998 was unusual because both bronze and copper-plated steel 2p coins were produced that year. Royal Mint. This makes the early bronze 2p especially easy to understand when you compare it with later issues. A simple test can even help identify the later steel type because copper-plated steel coins are magnetic, while the original bronze coins are not. But remember, the 1971 2p is bronze by its original specification, so the date and metal combination are consistent with the beginning of the series. This transition in composition is part of the wider story of how everyday coins change as manufacturing costs, technology, and economic conditions change. A coin that once represented a simple 2p payment can therefore tell us something about British economic history, manufacturing decisions, and the evolution of the currency itself. So how much could a 1971 UK 2p actually be worth? This is where we need to be realistic. A normal circulated 1971 2p is generally not $1 million coin, and there is no credible reason to tell viewers that an ordinary example will make them billionaires overnight. Current collector references show ordinary examples can remain close to face value, while better preserved, uncirculated or proof examples can command higher collector prices depending on grade and demand. Coinsanduc.com. Some references list much higher figures for particularly well-preserved proof examples, but those figures are still nowhere near the sensational millions of dollars claims often used in viral videos. The important lesson is that a coin's value is not created by a dramatic story. It is created by scarcity, condition, authenticity, demand, and what collectors are actually willing to pay. If someone claims your 1971 2p is worth an enormous amount, ask for evidence of comparable genuine sales, not just an internet screenshot or an auction listing with an unrealistic asking price. An asking price is not the same thing as a completed sale. The real collector market is based on transactions, condition, and authentication. And now, before you put that 1971 2p back into a drawer, here is the final checklist you should remember. First, confirm the date. Make sure the coin really says 1971. Second, examine both sides under good light. Third, check whether the new Pence reverse and the early Queen Elizabeth II portrait match the expected design. Fourth, look carefully for genuine unusual features, but do not mistake scratches or damage for mint errors. Fifth, examine the condition and avoid cleaning the coin. Sixth, if the coin appears unusually well preserved, proof-like or genuinely error-struck, have it examined by a qualified coin dealer or professional grading service before assuming its value. The 1971 UK 2p is valuable in a different sense even when it is not financially spectacular. It is a survivor from Britain's decimal day, the first year of a denomination that became a permanent part of British everyday currency. More than 1 billion circulation examples were produced. So the ordinary coin is not a hidden million-dollar ticket, but the hunt becomes exciting. When you start searching for the exceptional example, the coin with outstanding preservation, a special proof status, or a legitimate minting error. So if you find a 1971 2p, don't throw it away and don't believe every unbelievable price you hear. Turn it over, inspect it carefully, learn its story, and remember that sometimes the real treasure is not the fantasy of becoming a billionaire. Overnight, it is discovering that a tiny piece of metal in your hand has survived more than half a century of British history. Imagine finding a British coin dated 1988 and realizing that this tiny piece of metal has a story connected to Queen Elizabeth II, British coinage, the Royal Mint, and decades of history. But before you start dreaming about becoming a millionaire overnight, there is something extremely important you need to understand. Not every 1988 2p coin is worth a fortune. In fact, the normal circulated 1988 2p is a common coin because hundreds of millions were produced. The real excitement begins when you discover something unusual about your particular example. It could be an exceptionally preserved coin, a proof example, or a genuine minting error, and that is exactly what makes old coin hunting so addictive. Two coins can have exactly the same date, the same denomination, and almost the same appearance. Yet one can attract much more attention from collectors because of condition, rarity, or an unusual characteristic. So if you have a 1988 UK 2p coin, do not throw it away and do not clean it just because it looks ordinary. In this video, we are going deep into the history, design, production, condition, rarity, possible errors, and collector interest surrounding the 1988 British 2p, and by the end you will know exactly what makes an ordinary-looking coin potentially more interesting. To understand the 1988 2p coin, we first have to travel back to the beginning of Britain's decimal currency. The United Kingdom had already moved into the decimal system in 1971, replacing the complicated old pounds, shillings, and pence system with a system based on 100 pence to the pound. The 2p denomination became one of the familiar everyday coins of modern Britain. By 1988, this denomination had already been circulating for many years, and millions of people were using it every day to buy ordinary goods and pay small amounts. What makes the 1988 date interesting is that it belongs to an important period of Queen Elizabeth II's reign and to the development of modern British decimal coinage. The coin was not created as a treasure for collectors. It was made to perform a simple everyday job. It was meant to move from one person's hand to another, pass through shops and banks, and eventually become part of Britain's enormous circulation of coins. Yet decades later, collectors began looking at these everyday objects differently. A coin that was once almost invisible in daily life could suddenly become a historical object worth preserving. That is one of the most fascinating things about collecting coins. Their importance often becomes clearer with time. The coin may have been worth only 2p when it entered circulation, but its historical story can become much more interesting as the years pass. Now let's examine the physical identity of the 1988 British 2p. This is a bronze coin, weighing approximately 712 grams and measuring about 25.9 millimeters across. It has a plain edge, and the familiar reverse design features the Prince of Wales feathers, coronet, and the traditional motto ich dien, meaning I serve. The obverse carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II used during this period, designed by Raphael Maklouf. The combination of the Queen's portrait on one side and the Prince of Wales feathers on the other gives this little coin a distinctly British character. The design was not random. British coin designs often carry symbols connected with the country's history and monarchy, and the 2p was no exception. When you look closely at the reverse, the feathers and coronet immediately separate it from many other world coins. The words around the design and the large denomination make it easy to identify. Today, many people may look at the coin for only a second and see nothing special, but collectors look differently. They examine the lettering, the portrait, the edges, the surfaces, the strike, the color, and the smallest details. A coin that appears ordinary from across the room can reveal interesting characteristics when viewed under magnification and strong lighting. That is why serious collectors never judge an old coin simply by its age or appearance at first glance. Now comes a fact that may surprise you. The 1988 UK 2p was produced in enormous numbers. The recorded circulation mintage is approximately 419,089,000 coins. That means the ordinary 1988 2p is not considered a rare coin simply because it carries the 1988 date. Coin hunter. This is extremely important because online videos sometimes make people believe that almost any old British coin could suddenly be worth millions of dollars. That is not how the collectible coin market works. A coin's value is normally influenced by a combination of rarity, condition, demand, authenticity, variety, and whether collectors are actually willing to pay a premium for it. If hundreds of millions of identical coins were produced, the date alone usually will not make one example extremely valuable. But this does not mean you should ignore your coin. Instead, it means you should search for what makes your individual example different. Perhaps it survived in unusually high grade. Perhaps it is a proof coin. Perhaps it has a genuine minting error. Perhaps it has an unusual variety that specialists recognize. Those possibilities are much more realistic reasons for a premium. Current collector references also show that ordinary 1988 examples generally have modest values, with higher figures associated with better condition or special finishes, rather than ordinary worn circulation pieces. Numista. Condition is one of the biggest secrets in the world of coin collecting. Imagine two 1988 2p coins produced at the same time. One immediately entered circulation and spent years inside pockets, purses, tills, and coin jars. It was scratched, rubbed against other coins, dropped on the ground, exposed to moisture, and handled thousands of times. The other coin was placed away almost immediately and remained protected for decades. Although both coins have the same date, they can look dramatically different today. The second coin may still have sharp details, strong lettering, clean fields, and attractive surfaces. Collectors often place a substantial premium on coins that remain in excellent condition. When examining your 1988 2p, look carefully at Queen Elizabeth's portrait. Examine the hair, facial features, and lettering. Then turn the coin over and study the feathers, coronet, motto, and denomination. Look for heavy scratches, dents, flattened details, and unusual marks. But there is one mistake you absolutely should not make. Do not polish the coin. Many beginners think that making an old coin shiny will increase its value, but aggressive cleaning can actually damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. A natural, original-looking surface can be much more desirable than a coin that has been scrubbed or chemically treated. The next thing you should investigate is whether your coin could be a proof or specially preserved example. Proof coins are produced using a special manufacturing process designed to create exceptionally sharp details and attractive surfaces, and they are generally made for collectors rather than ordinary circulation. The 1988 2p exists in proof form, and collector references record proof examples separately from ordinary circulation strikes. Numista. This distinction matters because someone who finds a beautiful 1988 2p might assume that its shiny appearance automatically means it is rare. That is not necessarily true. A circulation coin can sometimes remain surprisingly bright, while a genuine proof coin has characteristics associated with its production method. The safest approach is to compare the coin carefully with known examples and, if there is serious potential value, have it examined by someone experienced in British decimal coins. Remember that an online asking price is not automatically the same thing as a real market value. Someone can list an ordinary coin online for an enormous amount, but that does not prove anyone is willing to buy it for that price. Real collector value comes from genuine demand and credible transactions. So if you ever see a sensational headline claiming that an ordinary 1988 2p is worth millions, slow down and investigate the evidence before believing it. Now we come to the part that makes coin hunting genuinely exciting: mint errors. A genuine error can sometimes transform an otherwise ordinary coin into a collectible curiosity. During the complex process of producing coins, mistakes can occasionally happen. A coin might have an unusual strike, abnormal alignment, doubling, a planche problem, or another manufacturing characteristic. But this is exactly where beginners can easily become confused. A scratch is not automatically a mint error. A dent is not automatically a mint error. A damaged letter is not automatically a rare variety. Sometimes coins become strange looking because they spent decades in circulation and were damaged after leaving the mint. If you believe your 1988 2p has something unusual, inspect it carefully under magnification and compare both sides. Do not scratch it, bend it, drill it, polish it, or attempt to improve the error. The original condition is important. A genuine minting anomaly should make sense as something that could have occurred during production. If the mark looks like something caused by another object after the coin entered circulation, it may simply be damage. This distinction can be the difference between an interesting collectible and an ordinary damaged coin. So the goal is not to find something that looks strange. The goal is to find something that is genuinely unusual and can be supported by evidence. There is also an interesting historical detail hidden in the material of the coin itself. The 1988 2p was made from bronze, with a composition traditionally given as approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, and 0.5% tin. Its weight and dimensions are also useful identification clues. Coinsanduc.com. This becomes particularly interesting when comparing it with later British 2p coins, because the composition of the denomination eventually changed. Understanding the metal is important for collectors because unusual weight or composition can sometimes raise questions about authenticity or an unusual plancher. However, never assume that a different-looking color automatically means a rare error. Bronze naturally changes appearance over time because of environmental exposure and handling. Some coins develop darker brown surfaces, while others may retain brighter copper tones. A beautiful natural patina can actually contribute to a coin's visual appeal. What you should avoid is artificial cleaning or chemical treatment. If your coin has a strange color, leave it alone until you know why it looks that way. Collecting is not about making the coin look new. It is about preserving what the coin actually is. The more you learn about the metal, weight, dimensions, and production of the 1988 2p, the easier it becomes to separate genuine unusual pieces from ordinary coins that have simply aged. So now we reach the question everyone wants answered. How much is a 1988 United Kingdom 2 pence coin worth today? The honest answer is that the majority of ordinary circulated examples are not worth anything remotely close to millions of dollars. Collector references place normal examples at relatively modest values, while better grades, brilliant uncirculated pieces, and proof examples can bring higher amounts. For example, one current catalog gives reference values around the low dollar range for ordinary examples, while other guides list higher figures for uncirculated and proof pieces. These are guide values, not guarantees of what every individual coin will sell for. Numista. This is why the phrase $1 million 2p should be treated as a dramatic hook rather than a fact unless there is extraordinary evidence. Could an exceptional coin ever be worth far more than an ordinary example? Certainly unusual errors, extraordinary condition, rare varieties, or historically important pieces can attract strong collector interest. But the ordinary 1988 2p should not be advertised as a guaranteed fortune. If someone tells you that your coin is worth $1 million, ask them to prove it with credible auction records or professional authentication. Do not sell a potentially unusual coin simply because someone gives you a random price, and do not pay someone a huge amount just because they claim your coin is extraordinarily rare. Knowledge is your strongest protection. And finally, here is why the 1988 British 2p is still worth examining even if it is not a hidden millionaire-making coin. This little piece of bronze survived from a period when Queen Elizabeth II was on the British throne and the country's decimal currency was already becoming an established part of everyday life. More than 419 million circulation examples were produced. So its greatest story is not that every coin is rare, it is that these coins were everywhere, and a small number may have survived in unusually good condition or with characteristics that make them more interesting to collectors. Coin hunter. If you own one, check the date, inspect both sides, examine the surfaces, look for genuine minting anomalies, and never clean it. If the coin appears exceptionally preserved, proof-like, or genuinely unusual, get a professional opinion before deciding what to do with it. The most important lesson is simple. Don't believe unbelievable prices without evidence. A 1988 UK 2p may not turn an ordinary person into a billionaire overnight, but it can still be a fascinating survivor of British monetary history. And that is what makes coin collecting so exciting. Sometimes the treasure is not hidden in the value, written on a price tag. It is hidden in the tiny details that almost everyone else overlooks. So the next time you see a 1988 2-pence coin, don't dismiss it immediately. Pick it up, turn it over, look closely and ask yourself one question. A tiny coin dated 1993 may look like nothing more than ordinary pocket change. But once you understand its history, design, metal, production, condition, and the unusual possibilities collectors look for, you may never look at a 2-pence coin the same way again. The internet is filled with unbelievable claims about old coins supposedly being worth millions of dollars. But the real story is much more interesting than simply shouting, $1 million coin. The 1993 United Kingdom 2-pence is part of the modern British decimal coinage system and carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse and the famous Prince of Wales feathers design on the reverse. But here's the important question. What could make one 1993 example more desirable than another? Is it the date? Is it the condition? Is it a proof coin? Could there be an unusual variety or genuine mint error? These are the questions serious collectors ask. A normal circulated 1993 2p is not automatically a fortune, but an exceptional example can be much more interesting than an ordinary worn coin. So before you throw one into a jar or spend it without thinking, stay with me, because we are going to uncover the complete story of the 1993 British 2p from its history and design to its production, condition, rarity, errors, and realistic collector value. The story of the 1993 2-pence begins with Britain's decimal currency revolution. Britain had already changed from the old pounds, shillings and pence system to decimal currency in 1971, when the country introduced a system based on 100 pence to 1 pound. By 1993, decimal coins had become completely familiar to the British public, but the design still carried symbols, connecting modern currency with centuries of British tradition. The 2p was one of the everyday denominations used by millions of people. In 1993, the coin carried the third portrait of Queen Elizabeth II used on British decimal coinage created by artist Raphael Makhlouf. On the reverse was the familiar Prince of Wales feathers design, associated with Christopher Ironside. The reverse included the denomination 2-pence, the large number 2, the feathers and coronet, and the traditional motto, Ich dien, meaning I serve, coinsanduc.com. Think about what that means when you hold one today. This was not originally created to become a collector's treasure. It was made to circulate through everyday British life. It could have passed through shops, banks, pockets, purses, and cash registers countless times. Someone could have used it to pay for a small item without giving the coin a second thought. Decades later, however, that same piece of currency can become an interesting historical object, especially when it survives in remarkable condition or possesses a genuine unusual characteristic. Now let's take a closer look at what makes the 1993 2p identifiable. The coin was produced from copper-plated steel, rather than the bronze composition used on many earlier British 2p coins. It has a weight of approximately 7.12 grams, a diameter of about 25.9 millimeters, and a plain edge. The copper-plated steel construction also means that the coin is magnetic. Coinsanduc.com. These details are extremely useful when examining an old coin because they give you a way to compare what you have with the expected specifications. On the obverse, you can see the Queen's portrait surrounded by the lettering identifying Elizabeth II and the date, 1993. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales feathers dominate the design. The details may appear simple from a distance, but under magnification they become much more fascinating. Collectors can examine the lettering, the edges of the design, the feathers, the coronet, the portrait, and the fields of the coin for unusual characteristics. Even the surface can tell a story. A coin that has been heavily circulated may have flattened details and scratches, while an example that was carefully preserved may still have sharp features. This is why experienced collectors never judge a coin only by its date. They examine the complete object. Here's where the story becomes surprising. The 1993 2p is not an extremely low mintage circulation coin. Approximately 235,074,000 circulation examples were produced. Coin Hunter. That is more than enough to tell us that an ordinary 1993 2p should not automatically be described as a rare $1,000,000 coin. This is one of the biggest mistakes made in sensational coin videos, confusing an old date with extreme rarity. Age alone does not create enormous value. A coin can be several decades old and still be relatively common. What creates serious collector interest is usually a combination of scarcity, condition, demand, authenticity, and something genuinely unusual about the coin. The 1993 date itself is therefore only the starting point. If your coin has normal circulation wear, scratches, and discoloration, it is likely to have only modest collector value. But if you find an example that is exceptionally well preserved, a genuine proof, a recognized variety, or a legitimate mint error, the conversation can change. That is why the smartest thing to do is not to ask, "Is every 1993 2p worth millions?" Instead ask, "What is different about my particular 1993 2p?" That question takes you from internet hype into real coin collecting. Condition may be the single most important thing to inspect next. Imagine two 1993 2p coins lying side by side. They have exactly the same date and denomination, but one has spent 30 years being carried around in pockets and mixed with thousands of other coins. Its surfaces are scratched. The queen's portrait has lost detail, the reverse design is worn, and the fields are covered with marks. The second coin may have been protected in a collection from the beginning. Its portrait could be sharply defined, its lettering clear, and its surfaces relatively free from contact marks. To a collector, these two coins can be very different. When you inspect your 1993 2p, look carefully at Queen Elizabeth's portrait, especially the hair, facial features, and crown. Then examine the reverse, paying attention to the feathers, coronet, motto, denomination, and surrounding lettering. Check the open areas for scratches, dents, and unusual marks. Most importantly, do not clean the coin. Many people believe an old coin becomes more valuable when it is polished until it shines, but aggressive cleaning can damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. A natural surface is often preferable to a coin covered with artificial scratches caused by polishing. If your 1993 coin looks unusually fresh, sharp, and untouched, preserve it exactly as you found it and have it evaluated before doing anything to the surface. Another fascinating possibility is a proof or specially prepared example. A proof coin is not simply an ordinary circulation coin that happened to stay shiny. Proof pieces are produced using a special process intended to create sharper details and specially finished surfaces, generally for collectors rather than everyday circulation. The 1993 issue includes proof examples, with references recording around 66,080 proof pieces. NGC coin. That is dramatically fewer than the hundreds of millions of ordinary circulation coins, which helps explain why proof examples can attract greater collector attention. But even here, you should avoid the mistake of assuming that every shiny 1993 2p is a proof. A normal circulation coin can sometimes remain bright or develop an attractive appearance. A genuine proof has characteristics connected to how it was manufactured and presented. If your coin appears unusually sharp, has reflective fields, or came from an old official coin set, it may deserve closer examination. Current collector references. List proof examples separately from normal circulation pieces, with indicative values higher than ordinary examples. Numista. These are guide indications, not guaranteed selling prices. The actual amount a collector might pay depends on authenticity, condition, demand, and the specific marketplace. Now we reach the part that can make an ordinary-looking 1993 2p genuinely exciting: mint errors and varieties. During coin production, enormous numbers of pieces pass through complicated manufacturing processes, and unusual mistakes can occasionally occur. A genuine minting error may involve an abnormal strike, unusual alignment, doubling, or another production-related problem. But this is also the area where beginners must be extremely careful. A deep scratch does not automatically mean rare error. A dent is not automatically a valuable mint mistake. A damaged letter can simply be damage caused after the coin entered circulation. Even strange-looking color or surface marks can have ordinary explanations. So if your 1993 2p has something that looks unusual, don't immediately sell it or clean it. Photograph both sides, examine the feature under magnification, and compare it with known examples. The important question is whether the characteristic could realistically have been created during the minting process Current collector references specifically note that 1993 2p examples with desirable strike errors can command more interest than ordinary pieces. Coin hunter. That does not mean every damaged coin is valuable. It means a properly authenticated mint error can be a completely different category from an ordinary circulated coin. So now we come to the question everyone wants answered. What is a 1993 UK 2 pence coin actually worth? The honest answer is that the ordinary, circulated example is generally worth only a small amount above, around, or close to its normal face value context, depending on condition and market. Current reference data gives ordinary 1993 examples, very modest indicative values, while uncirculated and proof pieces can be worth more. One current guide lists approximately $0.50 to $1 for certain uncirculated grades and around $3 for a proof grade, while other reference data gives indicative values in a similar modest range. Coinsanduc.com. These numbers should never be presented as guaranteed auction prices because the coin market changes and individual pieces differ. Most importantly, there is no reliable basis for telling someone that an ordinary 1993 2p is automatically worth millions of dollars or will make them a billionaire overnight. If you see a website or video making an extraordinary claim, ask for evidence of an actual, completed sale of an equivalent coin in equivalent condition. A seller listing a coin for an enormous amount does not mean anyone has paid that amount. The difference between an asking price and a real sale is extremely important in collecting. And here is the final lesson of the 1993 British 2p. Never judge a coin simply because someone calls it rare. Look at the evidence. Confirm the date. Check the portrait and reverse design. Examine the metal and physical characteristics. Study the condition. Search for legitimate varieties or mint errors. Determine whether it could be a genuine proof or specially preserved example. Most importantly, protect the coin from unnecessary cleaning or damage. The 1993 2p is historically interesting because it belongs to the established era of British decimal coinage and carries a design representing both the monarchy and traditional British symbolism. More than 235 million circulation examples were produced, so the ordinary coin is not a hidden $1 million ticket, coin hunter. But that does not make it boring. The excitement of coin collecting comes from discovering the exceptional piece among ordinary objects. Maybe your coin has survived in remarkable condition. Maybe it is a proof. Maybe it has an authentic minting anomaly. Or maybe it is simply a normal 1993 2p that has survived for decades and carries a small piece of British history. Either way, don't throw it away. Don't clean it. And don't believe an unbelievable price without evidence. Because the real treasure hunt begins when you stop asking whether every old coin is worth a fortune and start looking carefully for the tiny details that make one coin different from millions of others. A British 2 pence coin dated 2001 may look like nothing more than ordinary spare change, but take a closer look, because this little copper-colored coin belongs to an important period of modern British coinage. Some people see an old 2p and immediately assume it must be worth a fortune, while others throw it away without even looking at the date. The truth is somewhere much more interesting. A normal 2001 2p is not automatically worth millions of dollars, but certain characteristics can make individual examples more desirable to collectors. Condition, proof status, genuine minting errors, unusual varieties, and collector demand can all matter. And there is another fascinating reason to examine this coin. The 2001 2p belongs to the fourth portrait era of Queen Elizabeth II and was produced in copper-plated steel, giving it a very different identity from many earlier British 2p coins. So before you spend that coin, put it under good light, turn it over, and look closely. You might not be holding a millionaire's fortune, but you could be holding a fascinating survivor from Britain's recent monetary history. In this video, we are going to explore the history, design, production, metal, rarity, condition, errors, and realistic collector value of the 2001 United Kingdom 2 pence coin. To understand why the 2001 2p is interesting, we have to go back to Britain's decimalization. The United Kingdom changed to decimal currency in 1971, replacing the complicated old system of pounds, shillings, and pence with a system based on 100 pence to £1. The 2p became one of the standard denominations of the new decimal system. By 2001, This system had already been part of everyday British life for 3 decades. People used the 2p in shops, vending machines, cash registers, and ordinary transactions without giving it much thought. But coins often become more interesting with age, because they preserve a snapshot of the period in which they circulated. The 2001 2p belongs to the early 21st century, a time when Britain was entering a new millennium and everyday technology and society were changing rapidly, yet the coin itself still carried traditional British symbolism. On the obverse was Queen Elizabeth II, while the reverse retained the Prince of Wales' feathers design. This combination of a modern denomination with centuries-old symbolism is one of the things that makes British coinage so fascinating. A coin can be produced for an everyday transaction while simultaneously carrying a piece of national history in its design. The 2001 2p is a perfect example of that idea. Now let's look at the coin itself. The 2001 2p is a copper-plated steel coin with a weight of approximately 712 grams and a diameter of about 25.9 millimeters. It has a plain edge and is magnetic because of its steel core. The obverse carries the fourth portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Ian Rank Broadley, while the reverse features the familiar Prince of Wales feathers within a coronet, along with the motto Ictian, meaning I serve. The denomination 2 pence is also clearly displayed. Coinsanduc.com. If you compare this coin with an earlier 1971 2p, you can see how British coinage evolved over the decades. The Queen's portrait changed, the composition changed, and manufacturing technology changed, but the basic identity of the denomination remained familiar. This is exactly why collectors often enjoy comparing coins from different years. The date is not just a number. It tells you which version of the design, portrait, and manufacturing period you are looking at. On a 2001 coin, the fourth portrait is especially important because it represents the appearance of Queen Elizabeth II during a later period of her reign. When you examine the coin under magnification, the lettering, portrait details, feathers, and coronet can reveal much more than you might notice with the naked eye. Now comes one of the most important facts about the 2001 2p. A huge number were produced. The recorded circulation mintage is approximately 5,180,000 coins. Coin hunter. That means the ordinary 2001 2p is not considered an extremely rare coin simply because it has the date 2001. This is where you need to be very careful with sensational claims about million-dollar coins. If more than 500 million circulation examples were produced, the date by itself cannot reasonably make every surviving coin extraordinarily valuable. The real question is whether your particular coin is different from the millions of ordinary examples. Maybe it survived in exceptional condition. Maybe it was produced as a proof. Maybe it has a genuine minting error. Maybe there is a recognized variety that collectors specifically seek. Those are the characteristics that can potentially move a coin beyond ordinary face value territory. The important lesson is simple. Old does not automatically mean rare, and rare does not automatically mean millions. Coin values are determined by actual collector demand, scarcity, condition, and authenticity. If someone tells you that every 2001 2p is worth a fortune, don't believe the headline without evidence. Instead, inspect the coin and find out what makes your particular example special. Condition is where your 2001 2p can become much more interesting. Imagine two coins that were both manufactured in 2001. One entered circulation immediately and spent years inside pockets, purses, cash registers, and coin jars. It became scratched, rubbed, and worn. The other was carefully preserved, perhaps inside a collection or coin set, and barely touched. After more than 2 decades, those two coins can look completely different. A high-grade example may still have sharp lettering, strong portrait details, and relatively clean surfaces, while a heavily circulated example can show significant wear. When examining your coin, start with Queen Elizabeth's portrait. Look at the facial features, hair, and crown. Then turn the coin over and study the feathers, coronet, motto, and denomination. Look for scratches, dents, flattened areas, and unusual marks. The fields of the coin, the flatter areas around the raised design, are particularly important when judging preservation. And please remember one very important rule. Never polish an old coin just to make it shine. Cleaning can create scratches and unnatural surfaces that may reduce collector appeal. If your 2001 2P already has a good original appearance, leave it exactly as it is. Another category worth understanding is the proof coin. A proof is not simply an ordinary coin that happened to remain shiny. Proof coins are specially manufactured for collectors and generally receive special preparation and striking intended to produce sharper details and distinctive surfaces. The 2001 2P exists in proof form, and collector references record tens of thousands of proof examples separately from the enormous circulation issue. One reference lists 49 of 372 proof pieces for 2001, alongside a separate brilliant, uncirculated figure of 57,741 Namista. This difference is extremely important. If you find a 2001 P that appears unusually sharp and well-preserved, don't immediately assume it is an ordinary circulation coin. It could be worth examining more carefully, but don't make the opposite mistake either. A shiny coin is not automatically a proof. Some circulation coins can remain attractive, especially when they were protected soon after production. To identify a possible proof, collectors examine the overall finish, sharpness, fields, and other characteristics associated with proof production. If the coin came from an official proof or mint set, that can also be an important clue. The safest approach with a potentially valuable piece is to have it examined by someone experienced in British decimal coinage rather than relying only on an online photograph. Now let's talk about the feature that can make coin hunting incredibly exciting. Mint errors. Imagine millions of coins being produced through a complicated industrial process. Occasionally something can go wrong. A coin may be struck incorrectly, show an unusual alignment, have doubling, have a planche-related problem, or display another characteristic created during production. A genuine mint error can attract collectors because it makes the coin different from the standard issue, but this is also the area where beginners make some of the biggest mistakes. A scratch is not automatically a mint error. A dent is not automatically a mint error. A damaged letter is not automatically a rare variety. Coins spend years moving through machines, pockets, and bags, and they can become damaged long after they leave the mint. So if your 2001 2P has something strange, do not scrape it, polish it, bend it, or try to modify the feature. Photograph both sides. Use magnification, and examine whether the characteristic actually looks like something that happened during production. A genuine error should have evidence consistent with a minting process rather than ordinary circulation damage. This distinction is incredibly important because a strange-looking coin is not necessarily a valuable coin. The goal is not simply to find something unusual. The goal is to find something genuinely unusual and identifiable. The metal of the 2001 2P also tells an important story. Unlike the original bronze 2P coins from the beginning of decimalization, the 2001 issue was made from copper-plated steel. The published specifications give it a weight of about 7.12 grams, a diameter of approximately 25.9 millimeters, and a thickness of around 203 millimeters. Coinsanduc.com. The steel core means the coin is magnetic, which gives collectors another simple way to distinguish this later composition from the earlier bronze versions. Why did this matter? Coin production is not static, as the costs of raw materials, manufacturing, and currency production change. Governments and mints can change the materials used in circulating coins. The 2001 2P, therefore, represents not only a particular year but also a particular stage in the technological evolution of British coin manufacturing. When you hold it today, you are holding a product of a modern minting process rather than the bronze composition associated with the earliest decimal 2P issues. That difference may seem small, but for collectors it helps establish exactly what kind of coin they are examining. So now we reach the question that everyone wants to know. How much is a 2001 UK 2 pence coin worth? The honest answer is that an ordinary circulated example is generally not $1 million coin. Current collector references show very modest values for normal circulated pieces, while better grades can carry higher guide values. One catalog lists approximately $341 for an uncirculated example and lower indicative values for circulated grades. Another guide gives around $1 for a high uncirculated grade. UK coin catalog. Proof and specially preserved examples can have higher collector interest. But even those figures are nowhere near the sensational claims that an ordinary 2001 2p is worth millions of dollars. This is why you should always separate a dramatic YouTube title from the actual numismatic evidence. A coin listed online for a huge amount is not proof that someone actually paid that amount. Real value comes from genuine sales, condition, rarity, and demand. If your coin has an unusual error or an exceptional strange, do not scrape it, polish it, bend it, or try to modify the feature. Photograph both sides. Use magnification, and examine whether the characteristic actually looks like something that happened during production. A genuine error should have evidence consistent with a minting process rather than ordinary circulation damage. This distinction is incredibly important because a strange-looking coin is not necessarily a valuable coin. The goal is not simply to find something unusual. The goal is to find something genuinely unusual and identifiable. The metal of the 2001 2p also tells an important story. Unlike the original bronze 2p coins from the beginning of decimalization, the 2001 issue was made from copper-plated steel. The published specifications give it a weight of about 7.12 grams, a diameter of approximately 25.9 millimeters, and a thickness of around 203 millimeters. Coinsanduc.com. The steel core means the coin is magnetic, which gives collectors another simple way to distinguish this later composition from the earlier bronze versions. Why did this matter? Coin production is not static. As the cost of raw materials, manufacturing, and currency production change, governments and mints can change the materials used in circulating coins. The 2001 2p, therefore, represents not only a particular year but also a particular stage in the technological evolution of British coin manufacturing. When you hold it today, you are holding a product of a modern minting process rather than the bronze composition associated with the earliest decimal 2p issues. That difference may seem small, but for collectors it helps establish exactly what kind of coin they are examining. So now we reach the question that everyone wants to know. How much is a 2001 UK 2 pence coin worth? The honest answer is that an ordinary circulated example is generally not $1 million coin. Current collector references show very modest values for normal circulated pieces, while better grades can carry higher guide values. One catalog lists approximately $341 for an uncirculated example and lower indicative values for circulated grades. Another guide gives around $1 for a high uncirculated grade. UK coin catalog. Proof and specially preserved examples can have higher collector interest. But even those figures are nowhere near the sensational claims that an ordinary 2001 2p is worth millions of dollars. This is why you should always separate a dramatic YouTube title from the actual numismatic evidence. A coin listed online for a huge amount is not proof that someone actually paid that amount. Real value comes from genuine sales, condition, rarity, and demand. If your coin has an unusual error or an exceptional